Hello, everyone. Welcome. We have a wonderful day planned for you to do some visual arts, and not only visual arts, but learn a little bit more about treaties. This week is Treaty Awareness Week in Ontario, and so at our school board, we've invited Moses Lunham here to join us, as well as to teach us a little bit about the wampum belts and how important they are. Wampum belts are also treaties. So even though that we're speaking about treaties, paper treaties, that they signed out west, but also the important treaties and our first original instructions and original agreements when our cousins came across the big ocean to settle in what we now know as Canada. Hello, everyone. My name is Sherry Sayville, and I'm your Indigenous Education Advisor for Halton Catholic District School Board. So really, it truly is my pleasure to have Moses here. We've been doing some work with Moses for about a year now, and so many people are really enjoying your paint nights. Not only do you provide the paint nights for us in our community, but also in your community, and you have a huge following. So it's always lovely to see how creative that we are with the instructions from you. So Moses, welcome, and I will turn it over to you, and I will come back at the end of our session just to say thank you. So thank you again, Moses.
Miigwech. Thank you, Sherry. Thanks for having me today to come and share and to talk about treaties and, of course, engage in one of my favorite activities, and that is making art. Just a little bit of brief history about myself. I'm from the community of Kettle and Stony Point First Nation. My community can be found on the southern shorelines of Lake Huron. Maybe you're a little bit familiar with the area, Ipperwash Beach, in between the communities of Sarnia, Ontario, Grand Bend, just to kind of give you an idea of where my community is. And my community is part of the Anishinaabeg Nation, which is traditionally would be in this area of lakes. Maybe my nation is part of the land acknowledgement, and yeah, so this is the territories of my nation, and so that makes me an Anishinaabe. Yeah, so today I'm here to share with everyone as part of Treaty Recognition Week, and I'm quite excited to come and share with everybody and create a beautiful painting that you see over my right shoulder here. Now, just once again, just talk briefly about myself as an artist. Growing up, I realized that the creator at a young age gave me this gift of creativity. And I've been on this journey for a long, long time. And in that time, I've learned many, many things about myself as an Indigenous person, certainly connecting to culture, connecting to teachings, connecting with people, as a matter of fact, and sharing many, many stories and many teachings going back and forth. And it's been quite an enjoyable journey. And so now I'm getting into sharing a lot of my knowledge that I've accumulated over the years by teaching and passing on that knowledge to everyone else so that we can continue on and to learn more and more. Now, today I'm quite excited to be presenting a very special painting with you. The title of this painting is called Broken. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we move along into the process of what this painting is about and how it relates to treaties. And a very, very important subject because, as we know, all of us, I consider all of us as treaty people. And, this country here, it was celebrated, a few years ago, marking over 150 years of how Canada came to be. But prior to that, Indigenous people here were here for a very, very long time. And we understood that how we could share this land with others, because First Nations people were hunters and gatherers, and we would move around to certain areas of this part of Turtle Island looking for game, knowing where it was good to grow our crops, to look for medicines. It was seasonal. We would move with the seasons, right? And so, yeah, that has always been the way for Indigenous people. And so we have a good understanding of how we could share with others who came into our territories. And one of the very first treaties that were very established prior to contact was what is called the dish with one spoon. Unfortunately, we're not going to talk about that one today, but just to understand that, yes, treaties have been made for a long, long time, and they still apply today. which is also very important to understand. Now, when we think about treaties and those agreements that were made to nation, I think about, well, having a good understanding of what a promise is. And I think we have a really good understanding of that, especially when we're growing up, in the relationship with your parents, right? Sometimes they will make promises to you, right? If you do certain things, right? Let's say, for example, cleaning your room. If you clean your room, I promise I will take you to do this or do that with you. So we have a good understanding of what that means of making a promise. But sometimes they may not honor that promise. And it can be quite sad. It can be quite, it could be quite the feeling of how when someone doesn't hold up their end of the bargain or that agreement. And the same thing could be said for First Nations people in their dealing with a nation. And it can be quite uncomfortable for sure. This time last year, we saw in the eastern coast of how one nation, the Mi'kmaq Nation, had a little bit of, there was some, things were happening there within one of the First Nations there. And in regards to fishing about the lobsters last year. And there was a clear understanding of what was happening there. And it reminded me of that time last year of how it's important to look and understand how treaties work. And sometimes when things are not, agreements are not honored or they get broken. And so that was kind of served as an inspiration for this painting that we see here. And understanding that, things don't always go good. And when that happens, the peace is, the peace doesn't exist between these two nations to nations. And that's part of when it comes to wampums and treaties, two parties coming together and in good friendship, good mind, and of course to have peace upon this land of how we're going to share it together. Now, let's talk a little about this particular painting here. I'm going to pull it up close to the screen so we can take a good close-up look at it. And what this painting features is one of our wampum belts. It's called the two-row wampum. So I'm going to hold this up here real close here. And as you can see, it spells out the word broken here. This may appear backwards on your screen. I'm not 100% sure. But so I put the title of the painting here. And looking up here at the top portion of my painting here, you can see how we have these little brush strokes here, okay? And of course, we have 3 rows of this gray or white wampum beads. And then of course, we have these 2 rows of purple wampum beads. Now, this particular wampum belt, the 2-row wampum, was made with the Haudenosaunee people, which is, I'm going to interpret that word, that's called the people of the Longhouse. And here we can find communities here within Ontario, notable communities over by Six Nations or Brantford, Ontario. So they made this agreement or treaty agreement with the Dutch people. And so that we're looking at going back at about the 17th century. So the early 1600s or mid, 16, somewhere around there, this particular treaty was made. And this was in response to having the Dutch people come here and settle and sharing the land. And so they named it the two-row wampum. I'm going to show you another little painting here of what it's about and a little bit more information about it. Okay, so here we go. This is a good side, a little bit more detail of what that belt looks like. When we think about wampum belts, they are much longer in size, but this is like a detail of one of a particular wampum belt. You certainly can go online and look at how they look. Today, we can still find examples of wampum belts. They're called replicas. For example, I remember the very first time I went to the powwow in Six Nations and seeing the replica wampum belts there. And there are many, many wampum belts. So there are many, many treaties when we think about it. But this one stands out. It seems to be the most important. And I remember seeing those replica belts and I was really quite curious because I didn't really know about it. And being an Anishinaabe, which is a totally different nation. But I become to understand what that wampum belt represents. And up here in this painting, This is an expression of what I've learned more about what that belt symbolizes. And as you can see, I'm going to hold it up here a little bit closer and talk a little bit more about it. And my understanding is that, well, the purple bars of color represent the path that these two vessels are traveling on. And the blue area here is that represents a river. So what it is, this represents a river of life, that relationship that they have going down as a river. So here we have two nations that are represented. Here with the canoe, we have the Haudenosaunee people. And then down here, we have the Dutch people, okay? And so when it comes to negotiating or establishing what the treaties were, we're accounting for all the things that are inside of these vessels. For example, our laws, our way of life, the way we do things, right? And so that's all accounted for, and it's represented by those vessels that are here. So what we see here is that these two vessels are traveling down that river of life. And by having these bars like this, you can see they don't cross into each other's path, right? They're at the same place, point in time. Here we can look at it. This could be the present day. The trail behind represents what the past, and then of course the future with this area here of the belt. So that's what it symbolizes, is that river of life of two nations coming together in agreement and making this treaty. All right, so here, going back to our painting for today, talking about how sometimes, like I said, nations sometimes don't honor the treaties or those agreements that have been established, or there's some misunderstanding, or things change over the course of time, right? So we always have to kind of go back and look at, for First Nations people, our inherent rights of hunting and gathering, and considering that when it comes to treaties. All right, so here in this painting, we have this bottom row here. What I decided to do is that I represent how those agreements or promises are broken, and you can see some of the wampum beads there. They've come falling apart a little bit. So that's, once again, I use art as a means of expression of what that can look like. Just to talk a little bit about the wampum belts itself and what they're made of. And for example, this particular belt here is like 400 years old. And we think about that, wow, that's going back a good number of years. And can we still find wampum belts today? We certainly can. For example, just going back to the dish with one spoon wampum belt, we can see that, or know it's still in existence, because if we go to the ROM, which is in Toronto, they have the dish with one spoon belt there. As for this particular belt, I'm not sure. That could be to do a little bit more digging of where or if that belt is still in existence, which is pretty amazing to think about it. And certainly it would be something worth finding out. So yeah, once again, there are many, many types of wampum belts. We can look at over the course of time, how things change as we move through the course of time, and how treaties can be changed. And of course, those promises, those agreements are not being honored. And so there's a little bit about our project for today. Let's take a close-up look at what we're going to need in terms of our art supplies to complete our project today. And let's start off with our paint colors. So we are going to need the color black. Okay, so we're going to be using acrylic paint today. My favorite type of paint. I've used this forever. Easy to use, it's water-based, and it dries quickly. Just be careful that you don't get it on your clothing, because if you do, unfortunately, it won't wash out. All right, so once again, black. We're going to need some black, white, some blue, and some red. Okay, so those are the four colors that we need for today's project. Let's take a look at what else we're going to be needing for our work today. And that is 1 cup of water. Okay, so fill that cup about halfway. All right, anytime you have water on the table, it's good to have this stuff as well, because accidents do happen. Some paper towel. So yeah, so if you accidentally knock that cup of water over, this is good to have on hand to clean up that mess. But I also like to use paper towel to help clean my brush. So here's my brush here. If I'm finishing a particular step, I want to clean this brush, I wipe all the excess off onto the paper towel, and then I get it into the water, and that helps clean that brush up really, really good. Okay. yes, let's take a look at our brushes, what we're going to need. So here I have a large brush. Certainly this is good to use as well. If you do have a smaller brush, like a medium brush, that is good as well. And then finally, a smaller brush. So 3 brushes is ideal. Okay, now this is a step-by-step process. I will recommend what brush to use for each step so that you will get an effective result. Okay, so there we go. 3 brushes. Let's see. Paper plates. We're going to need a paper plate. If not, 2 is good as well, if you can manage that. 2 paper plates. And now this puts us down to our final art supply, and that is your painting surface. I myself, this one here, the original was completed on 9 by 12 inch piece of canvas. If you have this is great. But if not, that's all right. We're working with whatever we have at hand. And sometimes even just a piece of paper works as well. 8.5 by 11, that's fine as well. Or Bristol board is really, really good as well. Here today, I'm going to be using the same exact size here, 9 by 12 for my project today. All right, so there we go. So there's a rundown of all the art materials that we're going to need for today. And we're going to get ready to create and jump right into this. So, all right, so what we're going to do, we're going to start right here at the top of our canvas. So we're going to use our painting surface in a horizontal format. This is called landscape. And what I mean by that, the long sides of our painting surface is running horizontal as opposed to vertical, which is called portrait. But today we're going to be using the landscape setting. Okay, I'm just going to switch things up here. And we're going to begin to create this top row of wampum beads here. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to make the color gray. So let's add some white and a small amount of black to our paper plate. Okay, so there we go. I've added these 2 colors. And let's take our big brush. Let's mix these 2 paint colors together, which should make the color gray. So what we're going to do is we're going to lay down a color of gray first. We're going to let that dry. We're going to come back and go over top of it to add a highlight to make those white wampum beads. Now, as we're creating these beads, I'm going to talk a little bit more about how the wampum belts were made and what are they made of, which is very interesting when we think about it. Yeah, what are the wampum belts made from? All right, so there we go. There's my color gray. I'm pretty happy with that. I think I have a good amount as well. It's also important to make sure you have enough paint mixed up. Now this brush is a little bit big here. This is quite a wide brush here, but I'm going to show you something as well to consider if you only have the one brush. Certainly if I do the full width of this brush, I'm just going to do a little demonstration here. Yeah, that is a pretty big brush stroke there, pretty wide, but I can make this much thinner. If I turn my brush sideways, take a look at that. Yeah. So if I turn my brush sideways, I can make a much thinner line. So this will help you out when we're creating those wampum beads. Consider turning your brush sideways to create a thinner brush stroke as opposed to the full width. All right, that's if you have the large brush. If you do have this medium brush, let's downsize to our medium brush. We can use this, and we can use the full width of this brush to start making some of these wampum beads. All right, so I'm going to downsize on it because I have the medium brush here. Just get that brush loaded up with gray, and we're going to start right at the top. So we're going to go all the way across. I'm just going to start right here. I'm going to work my way this way. It's a little bit easier for me. And I'm going to just do my first brush stroke like this. So there is the beginning of my first wampum bead. And I'm just going to continue to go all the way across, leaving a little bit of space between each brush stroke. And as well, I want to have the same consistent height for these wampum beads. All right, so let's just go all the way across and start to make these wampum beads here. Now, as I mentioned, I'm just going to talk briefly about what the why wampum belts were made and what were they made from. So when they talking about establishing these treaties, the reason why they would make the wampum belts is because it was a visual minder. So everything, all those agreements, those promises that were made, they were interpreted into the design of what the wampum belt looked like. And once again, we can look at many, many types of wampum belts and just kind of get an idea or have a better understanding of what that particular treaty was about just by looking at the graphics or the design of each wampum belt. So it's pretty interesting. That's where the role of an artist such as myself to be able to interpret that and to create that. Okay, so we're just moving along here, getting a nice coat of gray paint here. All right, so once again, just want to make sure that you get a nice even coat of paint here, because generally this will take about 10-15 minutes to dry if we just kind of spread that out. If you clump it on a little bit, it's going to take longer, and therefore, yeah, you'll have a little bit more difficulty when it comes to putting the white over top of it. So yeah, so make sure this is spread out, nice even coat of paint, because we want this to dry quickly. We're going to come back to this later and add that white paint. Okay, so there we go. There's our first row of wampum beads. So that's going to represent the white beads. Now we're going to continue on, do the same thing. We're going to add another row just on top of that. So that means we're going to have to make the color purple. Let's take a look at the original here. I'm just going to turn this upside down to give you a better idea. So here's our gray beads. Now we're going to make our gray or white. Now we're going to make these purple ones. So we need to mix the next color, which is going to be purple. All right, so that means going back to this big brush here. And of course, we got to clean this brush. So here's where the paper towel comes in handy to help us with the cleaning process. Now I'm just going to take that and wipe all the excess gray off onto my brush here and start to clean this brush up. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm going to get it into the water. And by swishing it around, this should clean it up really good. Should be good enough to use. And we need to make the color purple next. There we go. There's our brush, nice and clean. Let's make some purple. Okay, so for those who may be wondering what colors we need these two colors, red and blue. So let's add equal amounts onto our paper plate and let's mix these two together and we should get a nice dark purple. Okay, so going back to talking about how these wampum belts were made. So they were made by the Haudenosaunee people, or nation, I should say. And historically, they came from the eastern part of Turtle Island. So I'm thinking of the area of New York, present day New York. So that area is where they sort of came from. And over time, they came up this way to Canada, of course, and settled into the one of the major communities is over by Six Nations or Brantford, Ontario. Okay, so let's mix these two colors together. And so what they did is when they made these wampum belts is that they actually used the materials that they used, the main materials to make the white and the purple beads is that they were made from shells. So these shells came from, of course, the ocean. Okay, so how they acquired these shells is, well, we also had what is called an economic, we did trading, right? So in order to get things as well, there was numerous trading going on as well. So someone would go out and collect all those shells that were needed in order to make those wampum belt beads. And that's pretty amazing when you think about it, because they were handmade. And of course, if upon close examination, just to get every bead the same, exact the same, that takes a lot of skill in order to make that. So the purple beads were made from a very special shell called the quahog shell. And then the white beads were made from another shell that I think we're pretty familiar with, and that is the whelk shell. Or sometimes when we think about that shell, it's like those kind that you can pick up on the when you walk that shoreline, you pick it up and hold it into your ear, you hear the ocean. Yeah, that kind of shell. That was made from the white beads. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to start my second row here of purple. And I just want to kind of start to stack it up a little bit here. Well, I'm using my big brush here, so I've got myself here. I need to switch that once again back down to my medium brush here. So yeah, so for those of you who are using the one big brush, let's continue with that if you want by turning it sideways or downsize to your medium brush in order to make these beads here. All right, quick little clean, get it into the water, good to go. Yeah, that's the good thing about acrylic paint. It cleans up pretty fast here, quickly if I need to. And now I'm just going to get back into making these wampum beads here. Okay, so moving along here, just a little bit of detailed work here creating this painting here. Just kind of get things measured up, getting these beads aligned. There, that's pretty good right there. Once again, we want to make sure that the paint is spread out so that it'll dry quickly. Go back this way a little bit here. All right, so there we go. There's our first two rows. All right, so now we're down to the next row, which is going to be another row of gray. All right, so that's the only thing about this is that we kind of have to keep cleaning our brush as we're switching up the colors. So yeah, once again, make sure you have some good paper towel here, a good supply of that. And that will help with the cleaning process. And we can switch in between each colors easily, getting this brush cleaned up. Okay, it's good. And back to the gray. Okay, there's my third row. All right, back to cleaning this brush once again. More paper towel. Wipe off all that excess, get it into the water, and go for that fourth row of wampum beads, purple. Okay, so I'm just going to go all the way across once again. And then we'll get into the areas of showing how that fifth and final row depicts or shows how the wampum belt is being broken. All righty, there's our 4 rows. And now we're going to create that 5th row, which is going to show how this treaty belt or the wampum belt has been broken, symbolizing those broken promises, those treaty agreements. All right, cleaning that brush once again. Okay, back to the gray here. Okay, I'm just going to turn this back up here now. All right, so for this portion or part of the painting here is, as you can see here, I'm going to start out here with a few beads here. There could be 3 or 4. Same with over here, but in between this space here, you can see how those wampum beads are just falling away from the main part of the wampum belt. Okay, so let's create that. Let's see here. So like I said, I'm going to go with maybe about 3. Let's continue on here, stacking things up here, aligning these wampum beads. Yeah, I'm going to go with 3 here. And now we have this area. This is where we can kind of, let's break it up a little bit. Let's have some of these wampum beads being spread out here a little bit. We can do little short brush strokes here, different angles. Maybe some could be going off the edge of our canvas. Maybe something like that, just a little bit, so just a few. So this way we created lots of spaces in here. This is where we can put that word broken in there, filling in that area. All right, once again, once we've done that, now we just, start cleaning that brush once again. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to let this dry a little bit here. Because like I said, we're going to come back over the top and create some highlights, but we need that to be a little bit more dry. So we'll give that a few minutes here. In the meantime, we're going to do the lettering. So we're going to start with some black, straight black to make the lettering. All right, there's my medium brush, nice and clean. Okay, so let's add that word. So got a little bit of space here. Let's add some black. And for the lettering, let's, if you do have the smaller brush, this is the ideal time to use that brush. If not, you certainly can still continue working with your medium brush. But once again, consider turning your brush sideways if you need to make some thinner lines to make these word letters. All right, small brush. I'm gonna add some black here. Start things out with the letter R. And I'm just gonna put, or sorry, B, sorry. Letter B right here, and then R. Already thinking ahead there a little bit. So broken there. All right, there's the letter B, uppercase B. So yeah, I'm gonna make all the letters uppercase. So I'm just gonna continue on here. Now I'm gonna make that R. All right, so 4 more to go. I'm gonna put the letter O probably right about here. So yeah, just depending on the space that you have created. I think that's a good choice right there. And now to find 3 more spaces here, K-E-N. I think maybe what I'll do is I'll put that K maybe right here, just kind of squeeze it in here a little bit. All right. And then E-N, and that will finish off our word, broken. Okay, so there we go. That finishes that step. Once we're finished that, let's clean that brush now. We can start to think about adding those highlights to each of those wampum beads. And I'm gonna go with let you go with your instinct here as to what brush you want to use. You certainly can go back or upsize. Once again, if you're using the medium brush, let's go back to that to create those highlights. So we're just gonna go over these again like a second coat. Or if you like this little brush, you continue working with that as well to create those highlights. Okay, so we're going to start out with the white beads. So I'm going to add some more white paint here. I'm going to go back to that very first row that we've created. So right back here. I'm going to try this here. I'm going to see how this looks. A little bit of white. It should be, yeah, it's pretty dry here. So yeah, I'm just going to go over that. All right, so that's pretty good right there. A little bit of a highlights. All right, just put some right here. Now, it doesn't have to be entirely filled. You see, I'm still leaving some of the edge of the gray here. I'm going to try my medium brush, see how that looks. I'm going to try both of them out. Oh, yeah. Much easier if I upsize to the big brush here. That is making it easy, at least for the first row. All right, so I'm just going to go all the way across. All right, there's that. Okay, I'm gonna go with the second row here. Still some spots that need a little bit of drawing, but that's okay. I can go over that. A little bit of blending will take place. So it's still good. All right, so it's working out here, working out good here. Just going over that. Okay, there's my second row. And now for that third row here. And of course, the beads that are kind of scattered. All right, there we go. Finished with the white beads. And now that puts us down to the purple. Purple highlights. All right, one more time here. Cleaning this brush up in between colors. A little bit of whites or a little bit of purple into the white, making a highlight color. And this will put us down to our final step for our painting for today. Just creating these highlights. All right, that's a pretty good purple. I might make it a little bit darker. A little bit darker here. All right, that's good. I'm gonna see how this looks. Yeah, that's pretty good there. I like that. All right, so there we go. I'm just gonna run with that, do these 2 rows, and that will complete our painting for today. Okay, there we go. Finishing touch to our painting for today. Highlighting one of the oldest trees here in Turtle Island, 2-row wampum. Once again, established in the 17th century or 1630, I think, or something like that, is somewhere around that date. A treaty made between the Haudenosaunee people and the Dutch settlers. And yeah, just thinking about how sometimes agreements or promises are broken with the wampum beads being scattered at the bottom. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's workshop. I had a lot of fun sharing with you guys and talking about treaties and the importance and how they're still at play today, and keeping those good relationships and peace on the land and sharing this land for sure.
Thank you so much, Moses. And it's, excuse me, it's really important to understand our original agreements. When we said that we are, our ancestors, it said that they are, please come and we're going to share the land. But we have to make some certain agreements first before we share the land. And over the course of the years, a lot of promises have been broken. And so this is how come it's so important to learn and of course have this treaty education week through in Ontario, but more importantly to really understand those relationships. And I liked how you really how you also spoke about the land acknowledgement, because the land acknowledgement is also a reminder of our original instructions, excuse me, as well as how we are to live in harmony and and in relation to each other, to walk shoulder to shoulder, just like those boats, right? At the
Yep.
other end, just like the two-row wampum, that we are to go on this road of life together, side by side, but not telling each other what we can and cannot do. So, I hope that I hope students really enjoyed this, but more importantly, understanding those promises and broken promises that have been that are still living out as in today. Yes. So again, thank you so much, Moses. It's been such a pleasure to be with you for these last couple of days, and I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow with what we're going to record tomorrow.
Terrific. All right. Miigwech,
Thank
thanks for
you.
having me, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day.
There we go. Oh, stop recording.